Hey YouTube, Jam here. Welcome back to the gaming station. So, it was brought to my attention that I tend to talk about nerfs a lot. I think it's because it's easier for me to get behind the idea of making things weaker instead of making them stronger. Well, today I want to talk about a few brawlers that have been on the weak side of the game for a while now. These brawlers weren't touched in the last round of balance changes, but two of them did get buffs back in February, but those buffs did not help them become viable again. I'm focusing on brawlers that I have, so more just won't be on my list. I don't feel like it would be right for me to suggest changes on brawlers that I don't even know how they play in real game. Also, I mean these changes to be made by themselves or maybe two of them. By no means do I mean all these changes should be made, as adding too much to a brawler can make them overpowered, and that is not my goal. I just want these brawlers to be more viable on both ladder and in competitive play. If there is a brawler you feel needs a buff, comment it down below. Also, add what changes you would like to see made to that brawler as well. Okay, so I got 3 brawlers I want to talk about, and the suggestions I make are all my ideas. They might not be the best, so if you disagree or have different ideas, drop those down in the comments as well. First up, I got Dynamite. So, everyone should have Dynamite since he's on the lower side of the trophy road. His base kit is pretty simple to use. I think he needs a buff because he's fun to play and he's clearly outshined by other brawlers, mainly Tick and now Sprout. And I would argue he's the worst thrower in the game. There's a couple of reasons why Dynamite's so weak. First thing is his low health. It makes it easy to be killed if you're ambushed or get rushed. However, I don't feel like him having low health is really a bad thing because he's a thrower and he should be hiding behind walls most of the time. But to me, the biggest problem about Dynamite is his very inconsistent damage. While Dynamite can do a lot of damage if you land both sticks of Dynamite, the problem is that it's very hard to do that consistently, and it makes his damage very unreliable. So, a few suggestions I have to make him a little bit stronger. First is decreasing the time it takes for his main attack to explode and deal damage. This change would make it a lot easier for him to land his shots and could help with the inconsistent damage problem. However, I don't want to see this change made to a super because it can do massive damage, especially with his second star power. It could be OP if it's too easy to land those shots. Another change that could help is if they decrease his reload speed. I'm not sure where Dynamite ranks in reload speed, I'm just thinking more shots equals more damage. This could, in theory, help him spam choke points and help maintain control of the map. And the last suggestion I have for Dynamite is to have his Dynamite stick spread out a little bit more. Now, this would make his damage a little more inconsistent, but I feel like it would also help his kit overlap with Tick a little bit more by giving him area of denial as well. This could be an annoying change because of the damage he can do, but it would possibly give him a chance to find a spot in the meta because he would have the area of denial like Tick, but also have a more useful super. Okay, so the next brawler on my list is Shelly. Since she's the starter brawler, she really shouldn't be too strong, but the problem is that she isn't really great in any game modes. She's good in Showdown if you bush camp and surprise a few people, and she's okay in Brawl Ball depending on the map and the team you're playing against, but that's about it. There's a few reasons why I think Shelly is so weak. First, like I said, she's kind of dependent on the brawler she's facing. She's really only good against tanks, and that's because tanks have to get close to her, and that's where she excels. However, Shelly has terrible poke damage. Opponents can basically ignore Shelly shots if you're hitting them at max range, and a good chunk of brawlers outrange her as well. So, if there isn't a tank on an opposing team, Shelly's basically useless. While her gadget does help her close gaps quickly, she only gets 3 uses per match, and if all 3 opponents outrange you, you can burn through those really quickly. One change that I think would help Shelly a lot is an HP buff. This would help her in 2 ways. It would give her more survivability when trying to close gaps, as long as you're using walls to hide behind while you're moving up. And this could also help her stay in a team fight or win 1v1s when she's in a lane. The game also has Shelly classified as a fighter, so I think this would also help bolster her role in that way. Another change that would help Shelly a lot is if they reduce the spread of her shot at max range. This would buff her terrible poke damage like I mentioned before, and make her less of a counterplay pick like she is now. However, I feel like this change would have to be put into one of her star powers. That way she isn't too strong early game and more viable when she's maxed out. Maybe reworking Band-Aid because while it's a cool star power, right now in its current state it's not very useful. My last idea, which is my favorite of the 3, would be to increase her movement speed like they did with BB, taking Shelly's normal movement speed and making it fast movement. This would take Shelly from being a more defensive brawler, having to wait for people to come to her, to a more offensive one, being able to run down people and get in their faces more effectively. Now, while you can argue that her gadget does that, like I said earlier, you only get 3 uses of that, and when you're outranged by every brawler, you're going to burn through those real quick. Increasing her speed will counter that. Also, having a tank counter that moves as fast as tanks just makes sense to me. She won't be able to outrun them, but she can at least keep pace with them in most situations. Okay, so my last brawler on my list of buffs is Colt. Okay, so in my opinion, Colt is a lot of fun to play, even if he's a hard brawler to master. It's very satisfying when you manage to land all your shots, and I feel like he can add some decent utility to a team, being a good damage dealer while being able to open up the map with his wall-breaking super. But what keeps him weak is his skill cap, honestly. It's very hard to land all your shots with Colt, and it gets harder the higher you push. People learn not to move in straight, predictable patterns. This makes it very difficult to play as Colt. There's just other brawlers that will get more value for the same amount of effort you put into it. Another issue right now is Colt is outclassed by a lot of sharpshooters in the game. Snipers like Brock, Piper, and B do more damage more consistently than Colt. And brawlers that fit Colt's skill set add some unique utility to the team. Rico has his bounce shot mechanic, which allows him to take better advantage of maps that have a lot of walls, while 8-Bit has his damage turret, which adds team support to his kit. So, the first idea I have to help Colt is to increase the size of his projectile. This would lower his skill cap by making it easier for him to land his shots. Like I said before, I feel like Colt being one of the harder brawlers to master is one of the things holding him back from being super viable. So, the next idea I have is that Colt could use a range buff. This would help him compete with snipers and 8-Bit on long-range maps. Bounty is a mode I feel like Colt should be decent at in both his theme and kit-wise, but he's not because of his limited range. This would help make him viable in this mode, as well as more open maps in other modes. And the last idea I have is to make his super a little easier to charge. This could do a few things for Colt. First, it would help him open up the map more consistently, which depending on your team comp is a good thing. The other thing is it would help him increase his total damage output, because Colt fires more projectiles during his super, which allows him to deal more damage. So these are just a few thoughts on brawlers that I think need a buff. I really like to see Mike's attack delay get decreased and Shelly's movement speed increased. I feel like these changes would help them a lot. If you like this video, leave a like on it for me. If you have any feedback, drop that down in the comments as well. Also, if you like this type of content, check out some of my other stuff. I did a video on why Nita's Hyper Bear is overpowered, and also a video on how to balance Tick. If you enjoy the content, consider subscribing. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.